Welcome to the Hornets Hivecast, the official podcast of your Charlotte Hornets. Here's your host, Sam Farber.
Welcome to another edition of the Hornets Hivecast, your daily podcast with all the notes, quotes, and daily buzz around your favorite NBA team, the Charlotte Hornets. I'm Sam Farber, and it is a pleasure and a privilege to have you with us once again on the HHC. It is our off-season series examining each and every one of the Hornets players from this past season and kind of looking into the future as well as reviewing everything they've done. Today, our player to spotlight is center Cody Zeller. And to help me take a look at Cody's season, we've got Matt Carroll, Hornets Director of Player Programs and a 10-year NBA veteran, here with us again on the HHC. Matt, how are you?
Sam, I'm doing great. Good to hear from you. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It is good to be talking basketball again. We talked a little bit about this off air that, it's kind of a sudden stop whenever the season ends. We went from doing a podcast every single day to now taking a week off for the first time in forever. So it's good to get back into the routine and looking forward to talking some players with you.
I am too. I always say, we were talking about this earlier, but there's only one team that finishes season probably happy. And everybody else is always a little bittersweet. The season is always long. It's a grind. Always ends a little bit early for most teams. But then again, you have an off season, a much-needed break for all teams and players and staff. So you can take a little bit of positive and negative from everybody's end.
I think that's very true. And I think for the Hornets, at least based off where the team is in its trajectory, it's more sweet, a little less bitter, because as Mitch Kupchak touched on in his end-of-season interviews, expectations were not exactly high for this team this specific season. Most people believe the Hornets exceeded expectations just getting into the play-in tournament, and they were kind of a victim of their own success early on, that maybe it does feel a little bit bitter that the Hornets were bounced as early as they were. But it's a young core, and we're excited to talk about these players. We're going to start off today, though, on one of the more veteran players, Cody Zeller, the center for the Hornets. He started the year as the starting center. Injuries immediately derailed him. He had the broken hand that sat him out for about a month. Able to get back. He was in and out of the starting lineup, at one point in and out of the rotation, but he ends the season on a strong note. 6 consecutive games in double figures, including maybe being the only player who played well against Indiana in the first half in that play-in game. He ends up under 10 points per game for the first time since 2019, but I think that had more to do with his minutes dropping overall, because if you look at his production per 36 minutes, it was a really solid season and his best in terms of 2-point field goal percentage of his career at just a hair under 60%. So all those numbers and notes are out there for you. How would you evaluate Cody Zeller in now his 8th season with the Hornets?
I thought Cody had a good season. I really did. And, the one thing I'll say about Cody Zeller, having watched him and knowing him for many years, he's the ultimate pro. He's a veteran now. He's got, 7 years of experience. He is a guy that, as a coach, you'd love to have on your team because he's very knowledgeable. He's got great IQ. He's experienced. He's good for the locker room because he leads by example. And he's a great teammate. He's unselfish. So he does all the things I think as a coaching staff you want in your locker room, on your roster. And on top of all that, he can play. He still has the ability to put up big numbers in certain games. But Cody's not the guy that needs to have, 10, 15 shots a game. He's going to get offensive boards. He's going to score when it comes to him. But I think what impresses me most about Cody Zeller and, over the years and even to this day is, he's fun to play with. He's a playmaker. I remember years ago when he was with Kemba. Kemba loved Cody because Cody knows how to screen. He knows the angles. You can throw it to Cody, play a little pitch game, and he'll find guys. He can take a couple dribbles, set guys up off their, DHOs. So there's a lot to his game that doesn't show up on his stat sheet, and I think that's where Cody brings so much value.
I think that's very true. And one other thing that didn't show up on a lot of stat sheets is just how good of an offensive rebounder he was. He never really played enough games to qualify for the top 20 list, but had he played in enough games, I think he missed it by maybe a handful, he would have been in the top 20. Cody Zeller put up some solid numbers when healthy there for the Hornets at a position that seems made in this era. You're basically only getting attention if you're getting burnt. It's almost like an offensive lineman in football. If you're getting attention, it's usually for a penalty or for a sack happening on your watch.
Yeah, Right. No, that's exactly right. And, Cody's smart. Anyone who hangs around the league, as long as he has already, you have to be smart. You have to know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. And Cody, I think, really maximizes his talent and ability. I think when he's playing against bigger, stronger, more physical players, he runs them. Cody's a great runner. He gets out, he runs the court, finds a way to get open layups, beats the other big down the floor. So he knows how to mix it up, and looking at his matchups, he can bang, never backs down. He does a good job at anticipating, drawing charges, fighting around fronting players. So I think he's really creative and crafty when it comes to the matchups that he faces. But I think a lot of that is just knowing the game, knowing who you are, and Cody, over the years too, Sam, has really worked hard on his shooting. Seeing Cody in the offseason with Jay Triano, spent countless hours shooting three-pointers. Now, obviously it hasn't shown up, I think, maybe how we would like. But I think what people have to realize is the work that goes in, with NBA players is just, incredible. Cody didn't shoot a great percentage this year, but doesn't mean he's not putting the work in, So that's kind of just how the game goes. It shows you how hard it is, I think, at the NBA level to, be a high percentage shooter or be considered, good enough to take those shots. But he didn't shy away when he was open. He let it fly. So I just, I've been impressed, I think, with his work ethic over time and just always being prepared, more or less mentally, knowing who he's going against in his matchups.
Defensively, how would you evaluate him? Because from my perspective, I thought two things stood out. One, he's not the shot blocker necessarily that P.J. Washington or Bismack Biyombo is, but he's going to make you work for your points. If you're Joel Embiid, you're going to have to shoot the ball to really dominate on the scoreboard. Cody is always going to be between you and the basket. And two, the refs seem to not like Cody very much because for such a likable guy, he fouled more people with his face this season than, he would get elbowed across the jaw and somehow it'd be his fault for being there. That's a personal pet peeve of mine. But I thought Cody did a good job of being who he is on the defensive side of the ball. But I'm not an expert in any sense. You are. How would you evaluate Cody Zeller as a defensive player?
I think your evaluation is fair. Cody, he's not your rim flying around shot blocker, rim protector, but he's a position player. What I really noticed watching him is, a lot of the bigs don't want to run a ton, and Cody's a great screen setter. So on offense, he can do things like that. But defensively, it's about being smart. It's recognizing play calls, in pick and roll situations, calling out the right coverage, helping all the young guards and perimeter players that the Hornets have. So I think a lot of it is Cody just being smart. A big in the NBA is really difficult on defense. That's why young bigs have trouble getting minutes on the floor because the coverages are so tough. Every player that comes off a ball screen, you're asked to do so much. You have to guard the smaller guys that are quicker and faster. Then you switch back onto a guy that's bigger and stronger. So the bigs are the one that control all the coverages, and they're in the back lines. They're calling out which way to force them, weak him, send him to strong, whatever you're doing that particular game, what the game plan is, it comes down to the bigs. So if you can't call that out mentally and handle that load, you're not going to be on the floor. So I think Cody, with his IQ, really helps a lot of the younger players or younger guards by just always knowing the right coverage and what to do and say at those times.
Before we wrap up our conversation on this past season, I want to ask you, Matt, do you have a favorite Cody Zeller game or moment from this season that stands out to you?
Oh, geez. I think some of my favorite moments with Cody are when he dunks on somebody.
Graham calling for a screen from Zeller. Just grazes one. Now there's a backdoor pass for Zeller, who throws it down on Antetokounmpo. Welcome back, Cody Zeller.
Because he surprises them. Usually it's in transition, and it's a little flip back or a kick ahead, and Cody goes off that left leg with the right hand and just hammers it home. And I think you look at both benches on both teams, and they kind of have that look of like, did he just do that? What just happened? Was that Cody Zeller? Because he's got some sneaky little hops, when he gets a running start off that left leg. So I got to say, when he dunks on somebody pretty nasty, and he had a couple this year, that's my favorite play that Cody does.
He had some special moments. We're going to talk to Cody next about his favorite moments from this past season and his overall evaluation of the 2020-2021 campaign. We'll talk to Cody next here on the Hornets Hivecast.
Be sure to check out the Hornets fan shop at Spectrum Center, now open Thursday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Check out all the newest Hornets gear or grab a new pair of J's. It's an easy trip on the light rail, or you can shop from the comfort of your own home 24/7 at HornetsFanshop.com.
Sam Farber here with you on the Hornets Hivecast, and now, without further ado, we welcome in Cody Zeller. Cody, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Your 8th season here in Charlotte, you ended up on a bit of a high note. You score in double figures each of your last 6 games, and you lead the team back to the postseason. How would you evaluate this year overall?
It was not bad. It was a long year with, COVID, and you never really knew what to expect when you entered the arena each day. With all the protocols, a lot of games in a short amount of time. But for me individually, I thought it was a fine year. Obviously, we would have liked to be playing deeper into the playoffs. I think we had enough talent, but too many injuries, not enough things that went our way. So a little bit of a sour taste in our mouth to end the season, but overall, there's a lot to be proud of.
You touched on the COVID protocols, and that's definitely going to be one big story of this year in any sport, in any facet of life. Necessity is the mother of invention. There's a lot of stuff that had to be put into place for you guys to be able to play. A lot of it I know guys didn't like, but I'm sure there's some things that maybe will continue on. Is there any one thing that was learned from having to play amidst a pandemic that you might incorporate into what you do moving forward, or would like to see the NBA continue?
I don't know. There was so much that was different. I think that I don't think any of us are going to miss the daily testing twice a day. I'm looking forward to just seeing some family and friends that I haven't been able to see. We've just kind of been on lockdown the past few months, but yeah, and just to have kind of fans back in the arena. I think they've figured out a lot of stuff in the arena where you can do the tickets virtually, you can do the concessions virtually, you can do all that. So I think they made a lot of changes that'll stick, and some that we'll be glad are gone come next year.
In terms of things you're glad are gone, what will you be more happy to be rid of, the fanless environments or the morning and nightly testing?
Both were pretty bad. I think the fans, man, it's over the course of a 72, 82 game season, there's plenty of nights where you kind of feed off the crowd and get some energy from them, whether it's home or away. Playing in front of fun atmospheres, everything else is kind of one of the benefits of playing in this league is the fun atmosphere. So that was a huge piece that we missed this year, and just kind of felt flat a lot of times out there. So we'll definitely be excited to have the fans back.
You were able to create your own energy quite a bit out there. Was there a specific moment during the course of the season that will stand out to you as something you always remember?
A specific moment, I think, there's so many. It was such a unique year that I think I'll remember a lot from this year as opposed to others. One of them that kind of sticks in my mind was we played Minnesota at home. We had a false positive. We had a positive test in the morning. And we weren't sure if we were going to play the game. We weren't sure if, who was going to be out because of contract tracing, everything else. So they finally let us in the arena about an hour before game time, which usually we have shoot around in the morning, we have a scouting report, we have treatment, you have a lift, you have a court time, all leading up to the 7 o'clock game. So they let us into the gym about 6 o'clock and weren't sure if we were going to play. And we ended up just basically throwing a ball out there and playing like it was old AAU days. You just kind of show up and play. And it was one of our better games all year. We played really well.
Hornets, chance at a run out. Monk leaves it for Zeller, and he'll drive and jam it with a right hand. Reward the big man for running the floor. Cody Zeller, 15. Hornets by 3.
Stuff like that, I don't know if I'll ever have another game where I walk into the building an hour before tip-off. Stuff like that is so unique that you can't draw it up any other way. So there was a lot of unique situations like that, but like I said, it was fun to do with this group, and it was a fun year overall.
That was certainly a signature moment about this team coming together. What about a signature play overall, maybe one not involving you, just something you witnessed that this team did that when we look back 5 years, if there's like a snapshot, a poster made of this season, what is the piece of artwork that goes on there?
We had an exciting team to watch this year. I think with, obviously LaMelo, some of his passes that he had, some of the dunks that Miles had, his one over Capella here at home, some of the alley-oops with Melo and Miles, and then we had a couple game winners. Terry's game winner against the Warriors, and Eric Collins on the call for all of those. So I think it was a really exciting, kind of fun group to watch. And like I said, I wish we could have felt the fans in the building, but it's fun to see just the support here in Charlotte for the team as well.
Lastly, before we let you go, I know there's always uncertainty when you enter into the offseason. There's some fluidity in the business in general, but you were one of the players that was contacted by Gordon Hayward coming in about the inside scoop on Charlotte. Tell me what it's really like here. JB already said that he hopes this is a place that people target and believes it will be with the young nucleus and what you guys have established here. What do you think that the biggest selling point is for Charlotte now as opposed to when you started your career here? Where has this team gone in your 8 years with the franchise?
Yeah, I think everyone can kind of see the direction in which the team is moving with younger players. Obviously, to see how well Melo passes the ball and gets it, finds the open guy, that's fun and exciting to play with. And then the city of Charlotte, like I was telling Gordon when I was telling him, the city of Charlotte's very family friendly. It's an easy place to live, as opposed to some of the bigger cities. I've always been a kind of a small town guy, so Charlotte's perfect for me. So if you're looking for, a group that's up and coming, exciting style of play, and a fairly easy city to live in, then Charlotte's a great spot.
Cody, it's been great watching you all year. We wish you nothing but the best in the off season and hope to talk to you again soon.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks for covering us.
Stick around, more to come after this on the Hornets Hivecast.
Hornets fans, the buzz is building. For season ticket packages for the 2021-2022 season, call 704-HORNETS or visit Hornets.com to chat live with a season ticket representative. Lock in your price today. Our thanks again to Cody Zeller for joining us on this edition of the Hornets Hivecast and throughout the season. Matt Carroll back with us. And Matt, your top line takeaway from our conversation with Cody.
I think Cody said it well. I mean, what a year. You're going to remember some just interesting moments that happened this season. I think even beyond the basketball, what has happened off the court, the COVID protocols, really just an appreciation I have for what everybody involved in this season in the NBA, players and staff, had to go through, but especially the players. My hat's off to them to make this season happen. It wasn't talked about in the media much, but the amount of testing, seeing players go in, you get tested, you have to go sit in your car for 30 to 60 minutes before you get a negative test result, then you're allowed in, and doing that day in, day out, coming back at night, getting tested again. I mean, you had no free time at all this season. Everything, when you weren't playing, you weren't in the arena, was coming back, getting tested. You weren't really permitted to do anything, like a lot of us. So I think just what the players had to sacrifice this season really kind of sums it up and wraps it up.
I agree. And I like that he pointed out that win over Minnesota on a couple of levels. One, it truly personifies how crazy this year was with the protocols. The team, an hour before a tip-off, was not in the arena. They were all sitting in their cars waiting to find out if they could come into the arena. And then on top of that, to still get the win, because the Hornets and Minnesota, as well as Oklahoma City, were in the top three in a category JB referenced quite a bit down the stretch, the teams with the most minutes and games played percentage-wise by guys in their first, second, and third years in the league. And while Cody Zeller isn't a part of that group, it really shows that, being young in the NBA is hard because you tend to absorb a lot of losses. Cases in point, Minnesota and Oklahoma City. But this Hornets team got a lot of positive experience, and I think you can credit a lot of it in some degree to some of the veterans like Cody Zeller and Gordon Hayward and others who were able to help steer this young, talented core along the way. Matt, when we look ahead, we're not going to speculate on anyone over the course of any of these podcasts. So, guys that are free agents like Cody Zeller, we wish them all the best. And if they're here with Charlotte, that's fantastic. If they go somewhere else, that's fantastic. Whatever is best for them, we're rooting for them all as people. But just in general, what do you expect the center position to look like in Charlotte come next season?
I think it's a great question. I think it's a question that a lot of people are wondering and talking about. I think having, this year with Cody Zeller and Bismack Biyombo kind of sharing the time and the position and the spotlight, and two very different players, will it look like that next season? It's a good question. I don't know. Can you keep both of them? Can you keep one of them? And then we have two young guys. We have two young bigs with Nick Richards and Vernon Carey Jr. who are young and they have potential. And this offseason is going to be huge for them on what they can bring and what can they, work on and develop and prepare themselves to be ready for next season. And then you got to look at free agency. Is there a free agent, that maybe the Hornets look to sign? So I would say, if anything, I think the Hornets will look to maybe upgrade their rim protection more than anything. Somebody different than Cody. And that doesn't mean that you can't have Cody or Bismack in addition to someone else. But I think that position, a big-time shot blocker, a rim protector, is really valuable in the NBA these days. And we really haven't had that type of person. I mean, Bismack Biyombo, I think, can be a rim protector. Doesn't quite have the size. He's not 7 feet tall as some of the guys in the league that really, really bring a presence, but obviously capable. But I would think you probably would look for someone a little bit younger. So I don't really know what it's going to look like, but I think the Hornets have options. I think they're going to explore different possibilities. But I think there's a chance that you could have at least Cody or Biz back, if not both, and add something else to it. So I'm curious to see how that plays out.
In terms of Cody Zeller as an individual, where do you see his value right now across the league? In a certain respect, center is a position that has undergone a lot of transition. Let's just put it that way, in terms of the way the league sees those players and what attributes they're looking for. But from a production standpoint, I don't think there's any question that Cody Zeller proved he can still be a very productive player, whether he's given 25 plus minutes in a game as he was at times, or if he's coming in spurts and just asked to, contribute 8, 10, 12 minutes a game. This is a guy who shot the ball, at least from the interior, 2-point field goal percentage, best year of his career. And even though he was under 10 points per game for the first time in a couple of seasons, said it earlier, that seemed to have much more to do with how many minutes he was played than his shooting percentage or his usage rate.
I think Cody Zeller still has a lot of value in the NBA. And I think there's going to be quite a few other teams that are going to be interested in Cody Zeller, because he's the type of player that, he's not slowing down. He takes care of his body. He stays in great shape. He's a veteran. He's experienced. He's played in the playoffs. So I think he brings a lot of value to any team. So I think people are going to take a strong look and look to try to sign him if he's available. I'd like to see him stay here in Charlotte. But I think with Cody, he's the type of player where he can play starter minutes. And he can get you 20 and 10 on certain nights. And then there's times when he can come off the bench and be a backup, and he might get you, 10 and 5, depending on his opportunity and how many minutes he plays. So I think having a guy that can kind of adapt to a starter and coming off the bench and be, a pro's pro and not complain and not whine and be a great teammate, good locker room guy. I mean, I don't see why any team wouldn't want that,
I very much agree with you. It's such a difficult position to evaluate. And again, I make that comparison to offensive linemen. People only seem to notice the centers outside of those elite few that are MVP or all-star worthy year in and year out. But most of the time people see them on the wrong end of a poster play. But you look at Cody Zeller's production, when he's healthy, when he's out there, he's able to hold his own with some of the best in the NBA. And taking a flyer on some of these guys who are having trouble staying healthy or struggling to stay productive in this modern era might not be the best route to go compared to a known commodity in Cody Zeller.
I'd agree. I look at Cody as having more value. I like what Cody brings to the table more than someone kind of on the downhill slope of their career.
We're very much going to be interested to see what happens with Cody. He's just a great guy, a great interview. It's been wonderful for me as a rookie broadcaster getting to know him, and certainly wishing him nothing but the best moving forward. That's going to do it for this edition of the Hornets Hivecast. Thanks to Matt Carroll for helping me break down Cody Zeller's 8th season in Charlotte. We'll be back in a couple of days with another player-focused profile here on the Hornets Hivecast.
Thanks for listening to the Hornets Hivecast. For more coverage, visit Hornets.com.